Hello, welcome to this video, welcome to my studio. So today I thought I'd share a couple of things with you. I finished some paintings which I've previously shown you. I've got an art book that I have come back to that I'm really enjoying. Thought I'd share that artist with you and maybe a couple of other artists who are inspiring me. And I also want to share some sort of advice that I've been giving myself. And I thought I'd share it with you too in case it's helpful. So I'm Helen Wells, I'm a full-time artist. I didn't go to art college, but I really think that art education is valuable, and so I'm on a sort of lifelong mission to learn about art, to learn about art making. And in these videos I try and share what I'm up to in my own art practice in case it's helpful and gives you any ideas for your own art making and your own creative life. In the last video I shared some paintings with you as they progressed. At the end of each painting session, I showed them to you, and I said, they're nearly finished. I'm going to put them away and come back to them. Well, I put them away, I came back to them, and they weren't nearly finished at all. And so that made me think, why did I think they were nearly finished at that point? And I spent a bit of time journaling and a bit of time reflecting and a bit of time thinking and really asking myself, what is the advice that I need to give myself now? What is the advice I need to give myself? Such a good question, because I think often we know what we should be doing. We are our own best wise counsel. And this is something that I wrote in my journal. I've just pulled out a bit of it. There is no rush. Let the paintings unfurl slowly and beautifully. Trust in their natural timing. Trust in yourself. Relinquish control and stop being impatient. Stop being impatient, Helen Wells. And that is exactly what I think I was doing. I felt like I was sort of rushing to the end of these paintings. And so I gave myself a talking to, and I basically gave myself permission to work on these paintings for as long as they took. Not to try and force or have an expectation of outcome, but just to give myself time and space to work on these paintings. And that's exactly what I did. I have spent so many more hours on these paintings, just quietly, slowly, gently moving these paintings towards their resolution. And they're finished, and I'm really pleased with them. And I just had to give myself some advice, permission to slow down, to take my time, to not force, to not rush, to not always be in a hurry. Allowing these paintings to unfurl was such a nice thing, and it was exactly what I needed. So here are the paintings now. I don't know if you can see that because of the light. So they are definitely finished. I've put 2 layers of satin varnish on these paintings. And the way I varnish my paintings is different depending on the paintings. I wanted these paintings to have a luster, to feel like sort of precious objects. And so I chose a varnish that I think represented that. So when I came back to these paintings that I thought were finished and weren't finished, I looked at them and I thought at that point they were too bright, too busy. When everything's bright, nothing's bright. They needed a bit of counterbalance. They needed a bit of sort of toning in. So what I've done is I've added this sort of raw umber, this sort of dark brown background, which I think makes the areas of colour that I wanted to sing really kind of stand out. So I've done quite a lot of some negative painting where I'm using this sort of dark brown colour to carve out the shapes and leave a sort of window of the painting underneath, and just sort of adding layers and layers. So in the previous video I showed you some sketchbook pages and some studies and some drawings that were going to inspire these paintings, and actually these paintings just went off on a tangent and really far away from those original inspirations. And that's what I love. I love that sort of sense of adventure with a painting. Sometimes you've just got to respond to what is and let your intentions sort of, fall away and develop what's in front of you. So I've added in quite a lot of this dark brown colour. I've added in quite a lot more cool colours. So a cooler pink and a little bit more blue to balance out these paintings. They were really hot, warm colours, which were lovely and I enjoyed, but I felt they needed a bit of a counterbalance. I've also added in some cool paint. And so this sort of dark brown colour where I've come in and I've taken out some of the busyness, and I think that sort of dark rich brown colour has allowed the brightness to really pop, the bits of the painting to stand out that I wanted to stand out. And the book that I wanted to show you this week is a book published by Thames and Hudson, and it's a catalogue that goes alongside an exhibition that was in the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam several years ago. And it's a book which looks at the work of Mathew Wong, who was a Canadian Chinese artist who is no longer with us. And I just really love his work. And it talks about how he was influenced by a whole range of artists. Mathew Wong was a self-taught artist, and he really leant on some of the great sort of artists of history and learnt to develop his style through unpacking and examining and learning from the giants of art that have gone before. And it's a really interesting book. And Mathew Wong's artworks, I think, have such a haunting beauty. It says here that Wong swiftly became known for his imaginary, mystical landscapes, which he brought to the canvas with a huge sense of colour and a great deal of impasto. And so impasto is the way in which you apply the paint. So if it's very thick paint and it leaves the kind of brush mark in the paint, that is impasto. And then it goes on to say the unabashed beauty of his paintings made them accessible and appealing to everyone. At the same time, his scenes possess a sense of depth and a sense of melancholy. And I think that's right. There is a beauty, a sense of wonder, a sense of awe, and then underneath there is something of loneliness, something of solitude. A lot of his paintings describe a really giant landscape with a very small solitary figure in the landscape. There's like a kind of overwhelming landscape and then a small figure in the landscape. Well, the book suggests this is perhaps a representation of some of Wong's mental health challenges. He suffered with depression and Tourette's, and he died when he was very young, in his early 30s. His paintings are incredible. He only had a sort of 6 or 7 year career, and the amount he painted is quite astounding. His paintings have got this wonderful sense of complexity, of boldness, but also of fragility, of loneliness. There's an interesting interplay in his paintings that I just find really fascinating. And his use of colour and marks are extraordinary. And you can see why he was drawn to Van Gogh as an inspiration, because Van Gogh is renowned for his mark making and his use of colour. And I think Mathew Wong was also a genius in the way that he combined colours and marks to create these wonderfully complex, rich, interesting paintings that both contain beauty and sadness. So this is the work of Mathew Wong, and he very evidently took inspiration and ideas from a really wide range of artists to try and understand his own sensibilities and sensitivities and preferences. So in the book it says he was influenced by Brenda Goodman, by Catherine Bradford, and I've been looking at the work of Catherine Bradford this week and I just love it. I'll link a really lovely interview with her that you might be interested in too. So I'll put a few links to the exhibition. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam has got a virtual walkthrough of this exhibition of Mathew Wong and Van Gogh's paintings, and I'll share it. It's a lovely way to experience an exhibition which is no longer on. And so that's the book, Painting as a Last Resort, about the artist Mathew Wong and Vincent van Gogh, and it's published by Thames and Hudson, and it's a catalogue from the Van Gogh Museum. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your lovely, kind, enthusiastic support.